So we are up to page 75, and in the middle of this chapter, which we discussed in chapter 7, called Beyond Astrology, and we really sort of try to work out the puzzle of idol worship. We said it can't just be that there's lots of crazy people out there bowing down to, pieces of wood. There's got to be something more to it. It's the second of the commandments in the Torah. The Torah very often relates to this as there being something real, even if it's something which is wrong, but there's something to it. So therefore, we explain that actually what the idol worshiper is doing is trying to bribe the clerk, is trying to bribe the person who's working behind the counter. And therefore, although Hashem is the source of everything, everything has to come down from heaven, goes through the intermediary or the muzzle, the zodiac, that world which is the in-between stage. And therefore, the idol is a representation of that, which originally started with literally the sun, moon, and the stars. And now it's actually being taken to be representations of those things. So basically, the idol worshiper is therefore saying, I'm not going to the source, but rather I'm going to whoever can fulfill my needs in the quickest way. And we said the danger of that is that it becomes not about what are my responsibilities towards God, but what can God do for me? That's what it all becomes. It becomes how can God serve me rather than how can I serve God? Okay, the truth is, it comes back to the old, even as I'm saying it, comes back to the old sort of I would say, discussion about whether we're here with responsibilities. Are we created on this world and we live in this world with responsibilities as human beings? Or we're created, or maybe some people would tell you even not, but we're here with rights, which means it's all about what are my rights in this world? What am I able to take or insist upon being what is owed to me in this world? So, as Jewish people, we're very much aware that we are here with responsibilities. Doesn't mean we can't have rights as well, at least vis-a-vis other people. But the honest truth is that we're here, we're created with responsibilities, with a mission, and therefore it's all about us serving Hashem rather than what can God do for me. Now, let's continue on page 75. We can now answer the questions with which we began. Other gods are not imaginary at all. They are the genuine and divinely created transmitters of Hashem's energy to the world. Their names are His, which means they're referred to as Elohim, which is the same word that we use to refer to Hashem, because they are the agents of Hashem's manifestation, which means everything that happens on this world, which comes down from heaven, goes through them. What is false about them is the mistake of considering them to have independent power. People make the mistake of them being an independent source, of being free to accept bribes, of being sources in their own right. There is a hand which gives. Idolatry focuses on the hand only and ignores the one behind the hand. True spirituality seeks to cleave to the giver, stays close to the giver. We find Avram arguing with Hashem. He is told prophetically that he will have a son. Yet he argues, how can that be? He asks Hashem, the stars predict otherwise. Meaning, Avram is someone who is able to read those stars. Avram knows that in the intermediaries, the way which naturally everything has to travel down to this world, he is not destined to have a son. If you remember, that was like the seed. It wasn't about telling the future, but it was about being able to see what's already been planted and how it's going to sprout, how it's going to grow. So he says to Hashem, it can't be. How do you understand a man arguing with Hashem himself on the strength of an astrological prediction? Surely Hashem's explicit word overrides astrology. And the answer, as we've explained, is that the stars too are Hashem's words. He writes the book of the heavens. And therefore Avram asks, but Hashem, your word to me is contradicted by your word in the stars. Hashem answers by teaching him the great secret of Jewish existence. And he took him outside, simply outside his tent, but mystically outside the sphere of the stars. Meaning God says to Avram, you're right, that's what the stars read as. And the way that all normal natural channels work, you're not destined to have a son, a successor, a continuation. But you are part of the nation that operates outside of that sphere. He continues, you're not bound by those channels, Hashem teaches him. They are natural and divinely inevitable. You are transcendent. You can define your own destiny. Of course, we must remember that Avram merited to be carried above the world in the zodiac because he behaved in a superhuman way. He withstood trials in a fashion which generated transcendence. The message is, if you live on the higher plane, it becomes real. So again, the answer, bottom page 76, that Hashem says to Avram is that there's no contradiction at all. And it's true that according to natural means and what's written in the stars, according to what naturally should come down to this earth, is that you're not going to have a son. But you, as the beginning of the Jewish people, don't operate within that environment. Your world is not natural, it's beyond, it's supernatural, and it always will be. He continues, the Gemara tells of many incidents illustrating this and how even one mitzvah can change a destiny. A young girl was destined to die on her wedding day, according to expert astrological prediction. On that day, during the wedding meal, she took a hairpin from her hair and unconsciously inserted it into the wall near her and transfixed a cobra, a snake, which was poised to strike her. When she was asked what her merit was, it emerged that in the midst of her wedding celebration, at that happiest moment, she had taken food out to a beggar who had remained unnoticed by all the guests. A mitzvah is performed, a physical act which originates and generates transcendence, and a person's destiny is altered. And you don't have to look so far, because nowadays as well, we're a people that punches above our weight. You know, you look at what's going on in the world with, once again, Israel is the center of everything that's taking place in the world. And we're in a position, Baruch Hashem, nowadays where we can really, in a physical sense, define our own destiny, as well as a spiritual sense. The fact that there is Israel and America, the two most powerful air forces in the world, very possibly, who are attacking Iran day in and day out at the moment before our eyes. It's just something we never thought we never dreamt to see this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, never dreamt to see such a thing. And certainly after the 7th of October and what took place then, no one would have imagined that this is how it would end. Yet, the Jewish people have never been a nation that is able to be predicted. No one's ever predicted what the future holds for us. And the truth is, none of us know how this is going to end or what the future will hold. But what is 100% clear to all of us is that this idea of the Jewish people being transcendent, being above nature, that is certainly alive and well. You know, I teach the class on Jewish history, and I teach the class about the history of Israel. And each time I'm amazed by looking at just like where we've come to after a long, long journey, and then coming back to Israel in more modern times, and the wars that have been fought, and the amazing miracles that we've seen, you know, in our days. Every time, it's just incredible to sort of be a witness to that and be a part of that chain of transmission about what it means to be a Jew. And especially reading that alongside, I read quite a bit about the Holocaust. Rabbi Schiff's new book I highly recommend, which is called Miracle, about the 51 boys, teenage boys. He just did a speaking tour and he came to Hasma as part of it. 51 Hungarian boys who were taken out of the gas chambers at Auschwitz. The only time anyone's ever been into the gas chambers and left and walked out alive. And it was inexplicable reason. Nobody knows to this day. None of them knew. And he managed to track down a number of these boys, about 5 or 6 who were still alive, and recorded their testimonies about what happened, tracing their journey, you know, through the Holocaust, their lives afterwards, how they rebuilt families, how their generations, you know, afterwards, by the time they died, more, you know, in more recent times. And that's the Jewish people. It's the incredible story of the Jewish people. He now ends off the chapter by relating this transcendence, and this is very key, very important, because he relates this to our actions. Meaning it's not enough just to be a Jew and say like, wow, we're amazing and we don't know why, but we've come back to Israel and we don't know why, but we seem to have survived for so long and, you know, appreciate that. That's not enough. You have to actually give it a reason, give it an understanding, and bring it down to earth really in a way that very much is something tangible. And therefore that's the last part of this chapter, the way he ends off. He says, mitzvahs live on the higher plane, which means that we have the power to actually operate on a plane which is above that world. In the same way that we're saying transcendent things happen to us, we are actually able to make things happen in that transcendent world. And that is what a mitzvah is. The root of the word mitzvah is closely related to tzavsa, which is togetherness. Tzevet. Anyone who used to go to Bnei Akiva, right? There was a team at Tzevet, yeah? There's a Tzevet is a team that works together. So it's tzavsa, togetherness, because a mitzvah brings us together with Hashem. An act which has the potential to lift the one who performs it into direct relationship with the source of all existence certainly has a power far greater than mere intermediate levels. And here's the amazing thing. A mitzvah seems like a very mundane act. You know, when I welcome a guest into my house and I perform the mitzvah of Hachnosas Orchim. That seems to be pretty mundane, pretty ordinary. Doesn't seem like anything so lofty and spiritual. Certainly the mitzvahs of Purim, when you're giving your Mashloach Manos and you're running around like a headless chicken for most of the day, and then you sit down and you have your meal, and you don't sort of think of it as something transcendent, but it is. Every single mitzvah action that we do, if we do it with the consciousness and awareness that I'm doing this because Hashem has commanded me to do so, then what I'm doing is I'm actually transcending the physical world around me. And I'm saying, I've got something which is more elevated. I've got something which is going to be a priority in my life, even though down here in the physical world doesn't seem to be something which is a necessity. I'm going to make this into a necessity. Every time we do that, essentially what we're doing is we're operating on that higher plane. We're operating on the plane which is above the natural world. We're operating in the way of the transcendent. Continues. The Sfas Emes says, when Hashem wills an action and we carry it out, we become one with Him. His Ratzon, Hashem's desire at the supernal level, formulates a command. That command is a direct expression of His will, is brought down and formulated as a commandment of the Torah, meaning every mitzvah of the Torah is a direct expression of Hashem's Ratzon, His will. We then make His will our will, okay, by fulfilling that commandment. We desire to carry out that commandment, and we carry it out in the finite physical world. His will is done, meaning we've completed God's will. We've sort of completed that circle. Together, we've closed the cosmic circuit. The circuit begins at the highest level possible. That's Hashem's will, God's will, and we bring it into action. The voltage is indescribable. The flow of current is infinite. Together, we have become one cycle of cause and effect. Page 77. As we form the desire in our minds to do His will, we become a miniature version of the entire process. A true Tselem Elokim, an image of Hashem. Together in the sense of our reflecting Him, as it were, and together in the sense of a partnership with one purpose, carried out by the harmony of desire of the partners, which means it's almost like going into business. You've got two different people. One of them is really good at the high-tech stuff and, can do the computer and the back office and everything needs to be done and AI and everything else. And the other guy is the client-facing person. They're awful at the computer stuff, but they're needed because they're the only one that can bring it down to earth. They're the only one that can speak to people. Hashem is the same type of thing. Hashem has a Ratzon, has a will to fulfill, but that will is never going to exist on this earth unless we grab hold of it, we make His will our will. Every single time we do that with a mitzvah, we are completing that circuit. We're partnering, quite literally partnering with Hashem. And there's something which I always feel is so powerful about that it almost, as much as we intellectualize and we think and we talk about mitzvahs and we talk about, and even learning Torah, and as much as we do that, there's something about an action which is transcendent, because there's something about an action which is beyond what you can explain and put into words. It's just a doing. It's just something which is, above this world, where I'm saying I'm putting aside my own will and I'm doing the will of Hashem. And by doing so, making His will into my will, I'm completing that incredible circuit, or bringing down, if you like, that shefa, that goodness, all the way from the highest level, which was the Ratzon Hashem. That's why a mitzvah act is so, so powerful. It's operating at a different level. It's not operating in the natural world. It's not operating at that intermediate level. It's operating at the highest level that there is. He continues, it follows then that when we do other than the will of Hashem, we're tearing ourselves away from reality. This is the flip side. The time spent in such activity, going against the will of Hashem, is time out of the circuit of existence. Time wasted in purely physical levels with no higher energy being drawn into them. Just as a mitzvah correctly performed has the power to bond us with the source, to make us part of the cause of existence instead of merely part of the effects. Conversely and frighteningly, the Gemara states that the consequence of attaching importance to astrology, of seeking divination and astrological prediction, is that the predicted event becomes inevitable. One who insists on living only within the natural becomes subject to it, which means if we don't view ourselves and understand that we are transcendent at all, then Hashem says in that case, that is how the world for you will operate. One may discover information about a forthcoming event, but in so doing, one may become its victim. The Gemara Yerushalmi explaining the verse, Lo Nachash b'Yaakov, there's no divination in Yaakov, states, another word, lo, can be read in two ways. There is not, or there is to him. There is no divining in the Jewish people, but if one gives credence to such things, if one seeks it, it is to him, it becomes active to him. So we've got to be very careful, because if we ascribe truth and we say or act in the way that there is nothing else which is more transcendent than what we see around us, and Hashem says, okay, then that's how your life will play itself out. Then you'll only ever be a person that is subject to those laws and those forces of nature. If we want to really truly be transcendent, then we need to operate on that level, binding ourselves closer to the source of everything, to Hashem, with the mitzvahs. He continues and ends off, the entire purpose of the Jewish people is to live above nature. Our challenge is to rise to the dimension of Hashem's will, the dimension where limits are set only by our own inertia and not to live in the mechanical. Our test and our challenge is to enter the source dimension. Failure is to be locked into the natural, the inevitable. Success is to break through to the source. And I think that's everything that we do as Jewish people, is trying and striving and doing our very best to connect to the source. We do that when we learn Torah, we go all the way back to the original source. We do that when we perform a mitzvah, which connects us directly to the will of Hashem. And then we see the fruits of that both in our lives and also as the way that we operate as a nation which does transcend. We've been doing so ever since Avraham Avinu, all the way back then. We're going to end there.